Throughout time, roller coasters have come and gone. Only some become legends for their intensity and thrills. Each and every year, coaster fans like you venture to the parks, searching for that one special ride that stands out above the rest. You submitted your rankings, and now it's time to reveal the group of elite roller coasters that you have voted as the best of the best. COASTER-net is proud to present the 2016 Thrilling 32.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another thrilling episode of COASTER-net Uncut. It is the first round of the Thrilling 32 Bracket Challenge. Tonight, we finally find out who is moving on through the first round and into the Sweet 16 of each bracket. I am Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York in bright green, celebrating the defeat of Raptor, along there with Andy Rybarczyk from Chicago, Illinois, who's doing the same tonight. How you doing tonight, Andy?
Oh yeah. Yeah, before we get into it, I just like to say that, the response to this poll has been overwhelming so far, especially to the selection show. Let's go to Twitter right now and see what people are actually saying. And I'll throw this tweet up there for you. Raptor Universe says, this is an embarrassment to roller coaster holes at Thrilling 32. He goes on to say, Danny Miller, hashtag Danny Miller screwed Raptor again. Wow, what a response, Danny Miller, to the screwing of Raptor. Oh, overwhelming on the internet. People are outraged about Raptor once again, and rightfully so, mind you.
See, you know what? I don't remember tweeting that. I think that a certain someone hacked my Twitter account.
Oh, stop, Danny Miller. Danny Miller, you said you screwed him. There's plenty of proof out there. But you know what? I don't want to dwell on Raptor all night. I got my sweet Raptor duds on tonight. I got my sweet Raptor hat, my sweet Raptor t-shirt, and my sweet Raptor jacket. Oh, man, I'm all decked out in Raptor gear.
And you know what? I might have worn my Raptor t-shirt just to celebrate more, but we had an issue with my camera. It's backwards for some reason, and we can't figure out how to flip it because for some reason you have the software on your computer for my camera and I don't. So I just went with the bright green polo shirt anyways.
Yeah. There you go.
But anyways, we're excited to finally reveal. We've had so many bracket submissions come in, some good, some not so good. And starting tonight, you're going to find out, you're going to start to find out maybe which way you're going on that. We've had some very, very good ones, some that have actually been quite impressive, and some that have been quite impressive the other way, where it's like, I can't believe that they didn't get any of those right. So, but again, we want to thank everyone for participating this year. The response has been overwhelming for sure. So with that, Andy, are you ready to start finding out who is moving on to the Sweet 16?
I am absolutely ready. This first round, people, in all seriousness, people have been commenting on how difficult it was to pick the first round of coasters, and I'm excited to see who actually moves on to round number 2.
Yes, all right. Well, let's get into it. We'll start with the wood once again, as we did a few weeks ago on the selection show, starting in the Cyclone region with Renegade versus Grand National, a GCI coaster from Valley Fair in Minnesota, going up against the Mobius Racing coaster at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, which a lot of our European friends seem to talk highly about Grand National there. Certainly one that seems to be unique, kind of the Kennywood racer of sorts of the UK, although people typically put Grand National a good bit higher. Renegade is a ride that you and I both rode this year, and I thought Renegade was fantastic. It's in my top 10. What were your thoughts on Renegade?
I think Renegade is, like you said, fantastic roller coaster. It just plays so well with everything that it does. It's surprising. It's fast. It's got the airtime. It's nonstop from start to finish. I think I really like Renegade.
Well, it is Renegade moving on to the Sweet 16. And you know what? Renegade was one of those rides that I think every once in a while you come across rides where you expect them to be good and they end up being great. Renegade is typically one of the GCIs you don't hear a whole lot about. And I'm really convinced at this point that it's just because it's at a park that people don't get to. You hear about Thunderhead, you hear about Gold Striker, you hear about Lightning Racer, you hear about Prowler. Renegade is kind of I think the hidden gem of the GCI collection in that fact. That first drop is unbelievable. That twisting S drop is really, really cool. So congratulations to Renegade. Moving on to the next round, and we'll play the winner of our next contest. The runner-up from a year ago, Outlaw Run, the Rocky Mountain double-barrel rolling coaster there at Silver Dollar City, going up against White Lightning from Fun Spot America in Orlando. Another GCI coaster that is really new, only a couple years old, but we've been on both of these. What are your thoughts on this one, quick?
Outlaw Run, as I've said this a number of times. Outlaw Run, I think, is an amazing roller coaster.
Yeah.
It took me completely by surprise when I first rode it. A lot of people criticize its length. They say that it's too short of a ride, that it doesn't have that time requirement that some people like to have. Outlaw Run, it's been a main eventer for quite some time in many of our polls, but you wonder now with the addition of all these new people, maybe there's a few Outlaw Run haters in the group. I don't know. It's going up against White Lightning, which in my mind should be an easy decision. White Lightning, a good coaster, nowhere on the near caliber level of Outlaw Run in my book.
Well, Outlaw Run does advance to the Sweet 16, and Outlaw Run is beginning its run again. I'm sure Outlaw Run, our champion from 2 years ago, falling to Voyage in the championship. Ironically enough, Outlaw Run and Voyage have been number 1 and number 2 the last 2 years. Outlaw Run winning 2 years ago, and then Voyage winning last year. So Outlaw Run is looking to extract revenge and return to the top. Moving on to the next matchup in the Cyclone region, we've got the Lightning track of Lightning Racer at Hershey Park going up against Legend at Holiday World. And Andy, I think you'll agree with me on this one. I think this one's an easy one. I think Legend is the way to go here. I think you and I had some amazing rides on Legend at Hollywood Nights last year, and I think Legend is only going to get better, so I would say look out for Legend next year, too, I think, because it is Legend moving on, so I don't know. What are your thoughts on that one?
Legend does things that no other roller coaster does. That helix goes on, and it just keeps going and going and going.
Keep going.
Exactly. Like how people don't love that sort of element. That really, can you think of any other roller coaster that produces that sort of experience in that tight of a helix? I can't think of anything.
I think the only thing that people might attempt to compare to it is the double helix on the Beast, but Legends is more relentless. I will say that.
Yeah,
Legends
absolutely.
is more relentless because the Beast's helix is banked to a certain degree, whereas Legends is not. And the Beast, when you come up out of the tunnel the first time around, you sort of lose a little bit of speed. Legend, you're just hauling ass the whole way around, and then it just goes batshit crazy at the end.
And the thing about Legends Helix is that you don't know when it's going to end. Like, going into the Helix on Beast, you can kind of see what's in front of you and how long this is going to be. Legend, I still don't know how they do that. It's magic in there.
Hey, it's the ending's over there.
Yeah, exactly. It's magic. Legend, no-brainer here in my book.
Well, and Legend is certainly going to have a tough matchup in the second round because it's got the winner of Rampage versus Shivering Timbers. This is one that people have struggled with, and this one in particular, a lot of people picking Renegade, a lot of people picking Outlaw Run, a lot of people picking Legend, some Lightning Racers, but the Rampage Shivering Timbers debate has kind of flown under the radar as the really, really difficult one because, number one, Shivering Timbers is not ridden by a lot of people, and number two, neither is Rampage, and it's brand new. It just had a bunch of work to it, and people like yourself who rode it since it's reopened love Rampage.
Well, I can tell you that's exactly it, that both these coasters are in parks that you may not have been to in your coaster careers yet. But both of these parks are probably ones that you want to put high on your list of places you need to get in the next few years. Shivering Timbers, if there's one of the two of them that has probably been ridden more, it's probably Shivering Timbers.
Yeah.
That you have a lot of the Ohio people, a lot of the Midwesterners, even the East Coast people make out trips out to Michigan's Adventure. And Shivering Timbers is obviously the main event there at that park. But Rampage is this new kid on the block. I've always heard rumblings, the legend of the Rampage, people saying how great Rampage was, and then it closes down, and nobody really knows. I made it a special trip out to Alabama this past summer to go ride Rampage to see what all the talk was about. And let me tell you, it did not disappoint. In my personal book, I have Rampage edging out Shivering Timbers just a little bit. They're neck and neck even on my list, but I still think I give the edge to Rampage on this one.
Well, congratulations to Rampage. Rampage is back with a statement. Rampage knocks off Shivering Timbers. Shivering Timbers, a ride that a lot of people had winning a couple of games here. So Rampage as well, though. So congratulations to Rampage and those who correctly selected Rampage. That was certainly a difficult one. So Rampage versus Legend, boy, that is gonna be a matchup to talk about. That is going to be a matchup
Absolutely.
to talk about in the coming days here as we get to the Sweet 16 show. So moving on to the Hercules region here in the wooden coaster bracket. First matchup here is Kentucky Rumbler and Cornball Express, two coasters that I don't think a whole lot of people have ridden. I've ridden Cornball. I have not ridden Kentucky Rumbler yet. I'm looking to possibly do that this year. You've ridden both. What's your thought on these two? Because I think Cornball Express is an awesome coaster.
I like Cornball Express. It's a fun ride. Kentucky Rumbler is your typical GCI. When I was sitting there writing it, I said, I wish this ride, if they did a little retracking on it, put some TLC into that, into the overall wood structure, it could be a really fantastic ride. Maybe people who rode it right at opening had it as being a really fantastic ride. I think even in its current condition is pretty dang good for a wooden coaster. This one's another close one, but having ridden Kentucky Rumbler, just this past summer, I had to give the edge to Kentucky Rumbler on my own sheet here.
Well, it is Kentucky Rumbler. Moving on, this was another difficult one that people struggled with, almost a 50-50 split. I think maybe a slight majority picking Kentucky Rumbler in this one, but Kentucky Rumbler is moving on and will take on the winner of another GCI coaster, an American Thunder, going up against the Wild Mouse from Blackpool Pleasure Beach, which is kind of one that we don't hear a whole lot about. I mean, but when you do hear about it, you say, oh, it's a Wild Mouse, yes, but it's a wood coaster, and, it's really weird, and the cars tilt and everything, and it's really unique, and a lot of people score it pretty highly for that. So I don't know. The Wild Mouse is a coaster that was in the Thrilling 32 last year for a long time and then dropped out at the very end of voting. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on this one? I think, having not ridden Blackpool, it's tough to gauge, but I would think American Thunder is gonna go here. I mean, I think American Thunder is really good.
And I know you think that, but and as you know, I'm not a huge American Thunder fan. Right. I never have been. I still think on my list here, I still think American Thunder has the edge here, simply because more people have ridden it, simply because it's the more well-known of the two rides. And still, most people, besides myself, pretty much don't have a lot of bad things to say about American Thunder. So I give the edge to American Thunder in this one.
Well, and this was kind of the half. I think this was kind of the half of a region where you kind of really didn't know who was going to come out of there, because it's ones that a lot of people haven't ridden. But pencil in your first upset of the tournament, because it is the Wild Mouse at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, knocking off American Thunder here. Not by much, but the Wild Mouse at Blackpool Pleasure Beach moving on to the second round. So now
that is a surprise to me.
Well, and now it becomes interesting because it's playing a ride that's very similar to American Thunder. So you think, well, now that it's 1-1, do you think maybe it has a chance for another one? I don't know. And I can tell you, not a whole lot of people had Wild Mouse winning that first matchup. So.
And I feel that Kentucky Rumbler is a ride that, and I could be off on this, but I feel that in general, American Thunder might be a little bit more well-rated than Kentucky Rumbler is.
Yeah, you might be right there.
I don't know how that's going to play.
Well, and if you're a person who had American Thunder, you probably had American Thunder winning a couple of matchups here. So that could be troublesome for your bracket right there. But moving on, we've got a battle of European coasters. We've got Vodon Timber Coaster from Europa Park and Balder from Leisberg in Sweden. So a good battle here of European coasters. Two coasters that I think would do rather well if they weren't going up against each other. You hear so many great things about Vodon. You hear great things about Balder. Two very different rides. Two modern coasters in the sense that they both have polyurethane wheels, which is a little odd for the wood coasters. You've got an Intamin plug-and-play. You've got a GCI coaster. And, I think Vodon had a tough matchup in the first round last year, but and another one this year because Balder from Leisberg is moving on to the second round here, and Vodon Timber Coaster falls in the first round despite doing very well in the poll last year, and obviously this year. We'll see later down the road where it actually ranked, but Balder taking the first round matchup. Thoughts?
This was a flip of the coin for me. That the most I know about either of these come from point of views, and it's hard for me to gauge based on that. So this was a flip of the coin, and Balder moving on just as well in my book.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Certainly two coasters that I think a lot of people want to ride. Final matchup here in the Hercules region, a battle of two classics. Phoenix at Knoebels and Raven at Holiday World. And oddly enough, Holiday World, the park with the most coasters in this entire tournament, the only park with 4 coasters in the tournament, all 3 wooden coasters and Thunderbird. A couple had 3 and several with 2 and then a lot with 1. But I don't know. Do you have a favorite here between the two classics?
You know what? I love Raven. I think Raven does some amazing stuff, especially during Halloween nights, and especially at night. My God, Raven just does things that you would not even. I don't know how they even do it. But still, at the end of the day, Phoenix gives you a ride like none other. I just don't. Raven's a great coaster, but Phoenix is just that much better. So I have to go with Phoenix on this one.
Yeah, tough draw for Raven because Phoenix is moving on, and this is one that some people struggled with. A lot more people than you might think picking Raven in the first round. I think that was kind of one that people looked at and was like, oh yeah, Phoenix. But when you think about it, that's one that you probably have to think about a little bit more on second thought, especially if you've ridden Raven at night.
Yeah, I don't know. Phoenix to me is just the superior coaster. Like, Raven is fun. Raven is fun at night. But at the end of the night and at the end of the day, Phoenix is just so much more superior. To me, that's not even a choice at all.
Yeah, that's a good point. So moving on to the next region here, we've got the Rolling Thunder region. We're halfway through the Thrilling 32, the round of 32 here, if you will, in the wood bracket. Thrilling 32 bracket challenge. We've got Tremors from Silverwood in Idaho going up against the Giant Dipper from the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, and these two are battling. Does it really matter who wins this one because of what's going to be waiting for them?
Yeah, and it's this matchup. I call this a buzzsaw matchup because whoever wins, you get the honor to be buzzsawed in the second round. I don't know. I think Giant Dipper at Beach Boardwalk looks prettier, so that's what I went with.
Well, Giant Dipper is a classic 1920s coaster. Tremors is a ride. Custom coasters. Late 90s, early 2000s, it's rides similar to rides like Rampage and Legend and Boulder Dash to a point, that style of coaster. It is Tremors moving on. Tremors actually won, I think, its first round matchup last year, so very quietly, Tremors is making a name for itself in this tournament.
Yeah, it's and that's a ride that I think more and more people are going to get out there to get on, and maybe it moves up the pole. That's not always the case, though.
I think the best thing that could happen for Tremors and the other coaster that didn't make the 32 but did quite well, Timber Terror, the other wood coaster there at Silverwood, I think Cannibal being built at Lagoon is going to make a lot of people want to go out there. And even though they're 8 to 10 hours apart, it gives people the motivation to get out to that part of the country, and they say, you know what, it might be worth the extra day to get up there and ride those couple of coasters. So I would predict that we'll start to see Tremors even more in this tournament. But Tremors now gets the honor of, as you said, being buzzsawed by the winner of El Toro and Boulder Dash. And I know this is an easy one for you. This is an easy one for me, too, in the opposite direction. You would easily go El Toro. I would easily go Boulder Dash. But as we expected, very, very tough for the people to decide who they really liked in this one. A slight majority going to El Toro in terms of who picked what. But knowing that in 2 of the previous 3 years, Boulder Dash ranked higher, but then last year El Toro was higher at 3 while Boulder Dash was at 4. Do you think El Toro will stay ahead of Boulder Dash, or do you think Boulder Dash is jumping back up?
It worries me because I once again see Boulder Dash winning the GTA award. There's still this Boulder Dash contingent of people that I just do not understand. I will never understand them. And to me, El Toro is such a fantastic ride. Those hills on El Toro's first half just completely take your breath away. And it's amazing. I don't even understand this argument. I don't comprehend this argument. For me, it's El Toro 100%. And the only thing that worries me is the number of foolish people you have voting.
Well, in your argument, they didn't put Raptor in the bracket, so you would say they're all foolish.
We already know there's we already know there's a considerable amount of fools voting in this poll because Raptor's not in it. That's already been established. Now we're going to see how many more are here.
Well, much to my demise, El Toro is moving on to the second round, and El Toro will take on Tremors in the second round. So El Toro doing the best it can to win the region named for its former neighbor there at Six Flags Great Adventure in the Rolling Thunder region.
It does restore some of my faith in humanity there with that decision.
Well, stay tuned because we have the Cinderella of last year's tournament, the coaster at PNE Playland, going up against Gold Striker from California's Great America, and you can see the California people shaking because PNE Coaster came out of nowhere last year, and you can see there where it's just like these guys to put this coaster that nobody knows about, which is technically on the West Coast, so they can say it's a West Coast coaster, but it's really the California people that keep getting upset with us, and you can see how upset they are because the Cinderella of last year is going to take down one of their coasters, but it is Gold Striker. Moving on to the Sweet 16, the PNE coaster does not get a victory this year. No glass slipper for the Pride of British Columbia this year. Gold Striker moving on.
That is surprising to me. I thought the coaster, had a little bit more legs on it this year. It had such a great run last year, but we knew that Gold Striker's coming up in the world. We said it last year that the more people that go out there and ride Gold Striker, the more people are going to love it. That's not a ride that's going to split the vote. That the people who ride it, if you ride it, you're probably going to like it. So we said the time is on the side of Gold Striker.
Yes, definitely. So, on that note, Gold Striker is often called Thunderhead West. Well, we have the actual Thunderhead here in the final matchup, Rolling Thunder region, taking on Hades 360, a coaster that I finally got to ride this year, and a coaster that I really liked. Hades 360 is rough. It beats you up. It's intense. It is not a coaster for a non-wood coaster fan, I don't think. Now, you've ridden the original Hades. You haven't ridden it since the inversion's gone. And what were your thoughts? And you're not a huge Thunderhead fan, so I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are on this one.
Like you said, I'm not a huge Thunderhead fan. I don't get it. I understand that for the time it was built, it was revolutionary. I can see how maybe people who rode it those first few years really loved it. I don't think it's that exciting of a ride nowadays in comparison to all the things that GCI has done since then. Whereas Hades, though, I thought Hades was really unique with the underground tunnel portions that just are deafening. If you haven't ridden Hades, there is no way to explain the sounds of going through that underground tunnel. And I think that really adds a lot to the ride experience.
Forever.
Oh, it does.
And there's airtime in it, too, because there's those little speed bumps.
Personally, I wish they would have done a little bit more with the tunnel. I think it would have moved that ride from good status to maybe great status if that tunnel maybe had just a drop in it out of nowhere. I think it would have been amazing. But that being said, I still think it's a pretty decent coaster, Hades. Personally, on my list, I have Hades above Thunderhead, and that's the way I went with this one. Even though I probably know that this one is probably going to go to Thunderhead, given the large amount of support that Thunderhead always has amongst coaster riders.
Well, a good amount of people did select Hades 360 to win this first matchup. I personally do put Thunderhead a little bit higher. It is Thunderhead moving on. Thunderhead is one of those coasters that I think has a lot of support and has historically done very well, not just in this poll, but in the Golden Tickets, the Mitch Hawker poll. It does well in the Coaster Buzz 100. So, Thunderhead is certainly a coaster that has a lot of supporters, so maybe not a huge surprise there. So Thunderhead Gold Striker, we get to kind of settle that one for this year. Thunderhead and Thunderhead West going at it in the second round, so we'll be excited to talk about that one for sure in the coming days.
And you may see the smile on my face growing already. My face is already lighting up with joy about what's coming next. So, Danny, why don't you bring it to us?
All right. Well, it is the Son of Beast region, and now the Beast at Kings Island will attempt to do what El Toro did and win the region. Or at least not win the region, but win the first round. Take that first step in winning the region that it is named for. That the same defunct coaster from the same park is in, but the Beast has that damn buzzsaw voyage. The defending champion is looming there, and I had to laugh. I'm not going to say who it was, but I told you this last night. I had to laugh because during the selection show a few weeks ago, you said even the Beast fans will not have the guts to pick the Beast. Even the Beast fans, when push comes to shove, will pick Voyage. And you know what? I got a submission in the Google form, and someone picked Voyage in the first round, and then in parentheses said, even though the Beast is still king. So clearly a Beast fan. Clearly a Beast fan picking the Voyage.
That's why I love the Beast fans. Oh, I love them all because they're all hypocrites. Because when push comes shove, they're putting Voyage over the Beast in the first round, and their precious little Beast is going down.
Well, are you in for the surprise of the century?
Oh, there's no surprise here, Danny. There is 0% chance that I believe Beast is moving on. And if it is, I'm hanging up the phone call right now and I'm leaving. I'm leaving the show. I'll retire from Uncut if the Beast wins this because there's no sense talking to these people anymore.
Well, if you're waiting for the surprise of the century, you're not going to get it here. Voyage is moving on.
Absolutely. All the beast mouse. To heck with them all. Put them all in a bucket.
Poor Beast.
Oh.
I like the Beast,
Yeah.
so it's unfortunate that it has such a tough matchup in the first round. But anyways, we'll move on to the next matchup.
Well, the worst news about that is for people who love like Coaster Studios and In the Loop, because now they still gotta put up with me. I'm still number one in the uncut in the video podcast realm.
Even though Raptor's nowhere to be found. So anyways, we're looking at Prowler versus Ravine Flyer 2. This is one we talked about during the selection show. Now, you are partial to Prowler in this matchup, and I am partial to Ravine Flyer, and this is one that a lot of people had, difficulties picking this one, almost a 50-50 split. Do you have a prediction here once and for all on this one?
This is one of those that it's a flip of the coin at the end of the day. Like you said, I'm a huge Prowler fan, but I know the people that rave and gush about Ravine Flyer too, which I think is a nice coaster. It's in my top 15 or whatever, but I don't think it can hold a candle to Prowler. Personally, I think Prowler is going to move on here. I'm hoping Prowler moves on, but I know in the back of my head that there's a pretty good chance that Prowler won't be moving on.
Well, we're going to see here's the thing. You call Ravine Flyer the poor man's voyage. We're going to get Voyage versus the poor man's voyage, because Ravine Flyer pulls off what some would call a slight upset here in this round. Ravine Flyer 2 moving on to the Sweet 16.
Well, it'll be, like you said, that next matchup's going to be really interesting, the Voyage versus Ravine Flyer, because there's a lot of people out there that don't like the Voyage. What's wrong with those people? And they gush about Ravine Flyer. So that's going to be really interesting to see if the defending champion can even make it out of the second round.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be an interesting one to look out for. So wrapping it up with the last two matchups here in the Son of Beast region, we've got the Coney Island Cyclone from Luna Park there in Brooklyn, New York, going up against Colossus at Hyde Park in Germany. An Intamin plug-and-play similar to El Toro, kind of the first generation of El Toro, if you will. This one, I was actually a little surprised with how much of a split there was on this one in terms of selections. Close to 50-50, maybe a slight edge towards Colossus, but I was really surprised at how much this one was split, because generally you hear better things about Colossus. Although I did ride the Coney Island Cyclone towards the end of this past year. They've done some wonderful retracking to it. Remarkably smooth now in a lot of places where it used to be very rough. So I think the Coney Island Cyclone might be making a resurgence, but it is Colossus from Hyde Park, Germany. Moving on, so we see another international coaster. I think that makes 3 now with Wild Mouse and then Balder so far. So we've got quite a few international wood coasters making a statement here. Colossus moving on.
That's fine by me. I'm not a fan of the Cyclone layout personally. So and I am a fan of the plug and play. So that's the route I went on this one.
All right. Well, we've got a potential matchup that's very, very interesting here. If you're talking about non-traditional wood coasters, because I think Colossus could fall into that category, being a plug-and-play. And if you want to talk non-traditional, you've got Goliath at Six Flags Great America here, going up against the Thunder Track of Lightning Racer. Now, the Lightning Track did not win its first-round matchup, so do you think the Thunder Track can kind of extract some revenge here? I personally, I don't think so. I think Goliath, I was on the show when we first started and really came out hard against Goliath. Before I wrote it, saying that I thought it was going to be too short, not enough elements. But afterwards, I really liked Goliath. I put it just below Outlaw Run on my list. I was very surprised with it. I enjoyed it very, very much, and it didn't seem all that short to me when I was on it, even though it is a very short ride. I thought it packed an incredibly hard punch. But do you think there's an upset looming here?
I don't. Goliath is too much of a good coaster. It's, I know there's people out there that don't say it's a wood coaster, that say it's cheating, whatever. But most of the people I've talked to really enjoy Goliath. And it just does things that just aren't done. The stall loops and the inversions are just out of this world. Plus, you got that amazing airtime hill coming off that first turnaround.
Yeah. Lots of airtime on this coaster, even though it's not a lot of hills.
Exactly, and that's not. And I haven't even talked about the first drop, which is out of this world. It's a legit 200 foot. It's craziness. It's a lot of fun. Goliath. I think Goliath is an easy choice here.
Well, it is Goliath moving on to the next round, so we will have Goliath going up against Colossus from Hyde Park, Germany, in that final region there, the Son of Beast region. So 4 really good coasters moving on in that region: Goliath, Goliath, Ravine Flyer, Colossus, and Voyage, for sure. So 4 tough coasters going forward in that round. So any thoughts on the first round of the wood before we jump over to the steel here quickly?
First round of the wood, we had a few surprises here and there, but I think for the most part, my bracket's still looking pretty good. There are a lot of tough choices, but moving forward, those choices don't get much easier here either. So I'm very curious to see what plays out in the wood bracket. But I'll tell you what, this has not been an easy year for bracketologists. That is for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a tough year, and you've seen a lot of good coasters lose in that first round. I mean, Boulder Dash is gone, Vodon is gone, both Lightning Racers are gone, the Beast is gone, Raven is gone. I mean, Shivering Timbers is gone. I mean, a lot of good coasters.
A lot of early exits. A lot of early exits for perennial favorites.
Yes,
Danny Miller.
yes, the term I like to use a lot. So moving on to the steel bracket of the 2016 Thrilling 32 Bracket Challenge. We'll start with the Z-Force region. New Texas Giant going up against Montu. Now, these are 2 coasters that get particularly high praise from a lot of people. 2 coasters that I enjoy very much. 2 coasters that you're not quite as high on as the rest of the coaster community. So I don't know. I feel like for you it was kind of picking the lesser of 2 evils for you, because you're not a huge fan of either of these.
I'm definitely not a huge New Texas Giant fan. Montu's still in my top 40.
Okay.
I enjoy Montu. But I don't think it rivals other inverts that are out there. A lot of people point at Montu like, oh, Montu the best. I'm not even amongst that camp. But in this one, people just gush about New Texas Giant, gush and gush and gush. I don't know. Me personally, I picked Montu in this one, but I could see this one going the other way just as easily.
Well, this was a tough one for people to start off this bracket with, because it's a tough one to pick, but it is New Texas Giant taking the victory over Montu. So maybe some would call that a slight upset. Some others wouldn't. I have them very close to each other, and I think I would actually have to look at my rankings to see which one I have higher. I might have New Texas Giant just a hair higher, but it is New Texas Giant. Moving on, so as we continue here in the Z-Force region, we've got the battle. Instead of David versus Goliath, we've got Goliath versus Goliath. We've got the Six Flags Over Georgia Goliath going up against the La Ronde Goliath. So 2 Six Flags Goliaths here, one in the southeast of the United States, Six Flags Over Georgia, and then one in Canada from La Ronde. 2 B&M hyper coasters. The one at La Ronde is technically kind of like a mini hyper. It's not quite 200 feet. Similar styles. You and I both rode the version at La Ronde this year, but I think the Georgia one is superior. What do you think?
Yeah, you know what? I was really, really big on Goliath at Georgia, years back when I first wrote it. I rewrote it this past summer, not as high as I once was on that ride. I don't know if it's lost a step over time. It's still a lot of fun. It's still great drops. That Helix turnaround, I think, is one of the more unique B&M turnarounds.
And intense.
Move to the other side of this argument, and you got the Goliath at Laron, people questioning this one a little bit, saying, wait a minute, I'm looking at the layout right here, and it doesn't look all that exciting. Well,
The
let
back
me tell
seat
you
is
something.
pretty good, though.
The back seat's pretty good, and it has some great directional changes where some of those hills are a little bit banked, and I'll tell you what, it did things that surprised me for a B&M. It does a lot of things that B&Ms do, but it did a few things that B&Ms I thought did not do, and I kind of get the sense that what they did with Goliath at Laron is kind of what they're trying to do with Mako down at SeaWorld for next year or for this season coming up. I think there's a lot of similarities between Mako and Goliath at Laron that will make Mako an interesting pick for next year's Thrilling 32. This year, though, I think over Georgia, just based on the that coming into this, that over Georgia's always talked about being one of the best B&M hypers. I think over Georgia's going to walk away with this one.
Well, it is Goliath winning from Six Flags Over Georgia. It is the Six Flags Over Georgia version taking the victory.
Nice.
So now, finally, we do not have to specify. And it was funny, in the Google form I actually put in there, because I knew if I didn't, someone would be a smartass. So I put in there, and I said, you must specify park to earn credit. Don't think you're putting Goliath and getting credit for it.
Yeah.
So I specifically put that. And we're recording this before the deadline here, but obviously, so you guys can see it right away. But so far, nobody has screwed that up. So it's Goliath at Six Flags Over Georgia advancing. So now here's the big one of the big ones from the first round here.
Anyone who bet a little money on that one. Hey, I bet you Goliath's going to round. Bingo, you just won yourself some cash.
Yeah, well, I don't know what's the easier bet. Betting that Goliath was going to win that first one, or that Raptor wouldn't have been in the bracket altogether. I don't know what would have been the easier bet. Man's got jokes now.
Oh, man,
I got you.
The man's got jokes. You should go on the tour with those jokes, Danny Miller.
I should. Well, here's the big one that we were talking about. One of the big ones, Banshee versus Maverick. The Ohio fanboys split right down the middle, and all the people who submitted brackets split right down the middle in this one, almost a 50-50 split.
Dude, this one is one for the ages right here. To me, it's not a hard choice. To me, Maverick is still the choice of choices. Banshee is a great coaster. Banshee is a lot of fun. Right outside. I think it's actually number 10 in my top 10. But Maverick is a special coaster. Not just great. Maverick is special. And Maverick, come on. Maverick's got to take this one. Maverick got embarrassed last year. Completely dumbfounded still as to how that piece of crap down in Orlando known as Manta was able to defeat the probably most special coaster in the world right now is Maverick. I'm not going to talk about that anymore, but I do think Retribution is here finally. Maverick's going to move on.
Well, and the interesting thing is last year Banshee did rank quite a bit higher than Maverick in this poll. But Maverick has a resurgence. Maverick is moving on, so Maverick is finally through the first round of the Thrilling 32. It knocks off Banshee, so the Kings Island fanboys, not only does the Beast lose, but Banshee loses now as well. Now we'll see how Diamondback does in a little bit. But so far, the first two of the three Kings Islands coasters not doing so hot here. So Maverick now moving on in the Z-Force region to take on the winner of Kumba versus Expedition G-Force. And the other night, you actually watched a video of Expedition G-Force, and you said to me, that looks like a spectacular coaster.
It looks legit. I have a few good friends that have been over to Germany that have said Expedition G-Force is the real deal. I take their opinion to the heart a lot of times because they usually have very similar opinions to me. And as much as I love Kumba, I love a night ride on Kumba during Howl-O-Scream. But Expedition G-Force looks to be amazing. That first drop that's almost straight down and that's just a little bit of a twist. Oh man, that looks amazing. And then you got multiple speed hills towards the end of the coaster that if they are doing that with any bit of speed, it's going to be an amazing ride experience. So I got to say Expedition G-Force is going to be the winner here.
Well, it is Expedition G-Force moving on, defeating Kumba, and now you see Expedition G-Force versus Maverick. That is a heavyweight bout
matchup
right there, and I think that could be a matchup. Depending on who you have going to your Final Four and your championship and maybe even winning it, that is a matchup that could potentially make or break your bracket. Maverick versus Expedition G-Force. So we'll definitely kind of dig deeper into that one in the next round here. But moving on to the Skyrider region, it is time for Manta versus Behemoth. And, Andy, I've been worried about this one. Because, number one, Manta had such an amazing run last year, making it to the Elite Eight. I'm worried that the disappointment is going to hit. Behemoth is a coaster that I really like and a coaster that a lot of other people like, so I am a little bit worried about this one.
Here might be the shocking part of this. I actually think, and I could be wrong, I haven't looked at my ranking recently, but I actually think I have Manta a few spots above Behemoth.
Well, you have Manta see, that's the funny thing about all this. Yeah. You have Manta really high, and I actually have Raptor. I think Raptor's in my 20s or 30s. I have Raptor really. It's not that I don't like Raptor. We just like picking on each other, right? But you know what?
I think I have Manta above Behemoth.
Well, and it's actually really interesting because this is one that people, I think, really struggled with because it was almost a 50-50 split in the bracket. But, it is Behemoth taking down Manta in the first round. Behemoth from Canada's Wonderland moving on, so maybe a little bit of a surprise to people. But the one...
I think the winner gets the pleasure. The winner gets the pleasure.
Well, and it's you know what? It's you knew when you saw the bracket, you knew that Manta probably wasn't making the Elite Eight again because of what's coming up next year. Because both of these coasters are fantastic. Blue Fire Mega Coaster at Europa Park and Fury 325 from Carowinds, and this is one that we talked about a little bit because where did Fury come in? Because Blue Fire was a top 5 coaster, I think, last year overall. So Blue Fire does very well in this poll. So does Fury debut high enough to knock off Blue Fire here? You think so?
Yes, the answer is yes. It's got to be. Fury, I hear very few people saying bad things about Fury.
Not
so
many.
I say yes. I think Fury is going to walk away with this round, and probably the next round too, if I had to take a guess.
Well, Fury 325 is on its way to making a name for itself. Fury 325 knocks off Blue Fire Mega Coaster, is moving on in the Skyrider region. No surprise there, I don't think. Despite how good Blue Fire may be, not really. I don't think many people are surprised with that. Only a couple people picking Blue Fire in this. Vast majority going with Fury in the submissions. So moving on, we see another new for 2015 coaster in Wicked Cyclone going up against Skyrush. This is one that we dug really deep into last time, and really the question of how much of that New England East Coast bias, and you have that Skyrush has that East Coast bias too. They're both on the East Coast, and the real question was who would come out of this. And this is a really difficult half of the bracket. It is Skyrush taking the victory in this first round. So Skyrush does knock off Wicked Cyclone. Wicked Cyclone does not debut high enough. Now the real tricky part is to try and figure out where Skyrush is in this whole thing, because we looked at it during the selection show. Skyrush finished 15th in 2012. 2013 didn't even finish in the top 32. Then last year finished number 20. So the real kicker is, where is Skyrush in this whole mix? And knowing now that Wicked Cyclone is lower, maybe you feel a little bit worried if you have Twisted Colossus moving on, because you've heard a lot of people compare those two and talk about them, both very highly. So maybe you're a little worried if you have Colossus going later down the road, and certainly if you picked Wicked Cyclone, because there were a share of people who picked Wicked Cyclone here. So that's certainly that was an intriguing matchup from day one, Skyrush and Wicked Cyclone.
And for me personally, I love Skyrush, so it was me weighing my personal feelings towards Skyrush versus my belief of what the general coaster enthusiast group thinks of Wicked Cyclone, and how far does that take it. See Skyrush move on. The better coaster won, moving on to the next matchup, I'd say.
Yeah, so we've got our third new for 2015 coaster in this region, Thunderbird from Holiday World, going up against last year's champion Bizarro from Six Flags New England. And to my surprise, a lot of folks picking Thunderbird in the bracket submissions. A lot of people thinking Thunderbird has what it takes to take down the defending champ. What do you think? We have never had a defending champ lose in the first round.
I personally think Thunderbird's a better ride. I think it's a far better ride than Bizarro. I think it's means more to the park than Bizarro means to that park. However, I do not believe in any sense or any place in my mind that Bizarro is going to fall to Thunderbird in the first round. I just don't see it happening. That Bizarro was the champ. The champ doesn't go down in round one. I'm not saying how far it's going to go, but the champ doesn't go down in round one.
Yeah, well, and I have Bizarro just slightly ahead of. I do have Thunderbird. I think Thunderbird's either 10 or 11 on my list. I would have to look, but you and I were both very impressed with Thunderbird. And even though I do really, really like Bizarro, I wouldn't mind seeing Thunderbird winning this matchup. But you're right, the champ doesn't lose in round one. Bizarro is moving on to the Sweet 16 to take on Skyrush. So now you've got the old school favorite and one of the new school favorites. Last year we saw Skyrush go up against Millennium Force. Millennium Force won that one. Skyrush couldn't take down Millennium Force last year. So now the question is, Skyrush gets to play the other big coaster that we've seen the golden tickets for here. Can Skyrush take down Bizarro now? That's going to be an interesting one to talk about in the coming days. So now we're halfway through the Steel Bracket Thrilling 32 Bracket Challenge 2016. The Hypersonic XLC region, Phantom's Revenge, and Millennium Force, two longtime staples of several roller coaster polls, two coasters that are very well liked in the community. Thoughts on this one, Andy?
Dude, Phantom's Revenge is a fun coaster. I've never been hurt so bad on a coaster before. I think it busted my spleen, where I was legitimately injured for about 25 minutes, having sat in the back for a few rides. It's a fun ride. But let's be honest here. Phantom's Revenge, Millennium Force. Millennium Force, in my book, the easy victor in this matchup, moving on to round two, to fight, once again, maybe Nemesis. But come on. Millennium Force, of course. Let's just move on.
Well, and this is Phantom's Revenge is one of those coasters that I think when you ride it, you're like, wow, this really is a nice coaster, but then it's one that you kind of forget about if you don't ride it for a while, whereas Millennium Force is one of those that really sticks in your mind, and you remember, okay, that was really a fantastic coaster. I personally, just like you, have Millennium Force much higher. Well, maybe not much higher, but certainly a good amount higher on my personal list. When we talked about Voyage versus Beast, I talked about the upset of the century. This might be the upset of the tournament. Phantom's Revenge beats Millennium Force, Andy. I am serious. Phantom's Revenge ranked higher.
Right,
Phantom's Revenge ranked higher in this year's poll than Millennium Force.
Oh, if Ohio people hated you for the beast, you don't. The emails you're gonna get.
Now here's a live look-in. Here's a live look-in to just about everyone who filled out a bracket this year.
Holy cow. Are you shitting me, Danny Miller? Did you just tell me that Phantom's Revenge defeated Millennium Force in the first round? There are quite a few people. Maybe even you might want to text Danny Fiedler right now and see if she's doing okay.
Yeah, our contest winner from last year, Jenny Fiedler, she's a huge Millennium Force fan, as was discussed on the show last year when she appeared. If Millennium Force beat Skyrush last year, which was kind of the big build-up, Phantom's Revenge beating Millennium Force doesn't even get a shot at Nemesis this year. Nemesis beat Millennium last year in the Elite Eight. Doesn't even get a shot this year. So, personally, I was surprised by this. I think Millennium Force is the better coaster. I think Millennium Force, I think, on my personal list of the 8 I've ridden, or the 6 I've ridden in this region, of the 8, I think I put Millennium Force higher than any of the other coasters in this region. I think Millennium Force is the best coaster in this region of the ones I've been on, but loses in the first round. That's not what the voters said.
It's the Millennium Force haters out there. There's quite a contingent of people that do not like Millennium Force. I do not understand these people.
But they're out there.
I don't get it. They are definitely out there. And thus you see the results of that this isn't trickery. Indeed, your screen has said that Phantom's Revenge defeated Millennium Force in round 1. Wow.
That's a shocker. That's an upset.
This is like Brock Lesnar defeating the Undertaker to me right now. That's what this is at WrestleMania. This is unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on, we talked about Nemesis. Nemesis going up against Lightning Run from Kentucky Kingdom, a coaster that has ranked very highly in its first 2 years. Did not make the bracket last year because it didn't meet the minimum rider requirement, but makes it this year. A coaster that you were not a fan of Lightning Run at all. I liked Lightning Run. I did not think it was the top 5, top 10 coaster that some people have said. I think a lot of people who are putting Lightning Run in the top 10, top 5 even, I think a lot of those people, not all of them, because I do know a few people who have traveled very well and put this coaster high, but I think a lot of it has to do with not having been to a lot of places. A lot of your Ohio, Indiana, Illinois people who have maybe only been on 100, 150 coasters or so put this ride high, and I see why. Me, having been on close to 500, this is a ride that is in my lower 20s, high 30s. Still very good. Top 10% of my list on the steel side. But I don't see Lightning Run pulling up the upset over Nemesis, which made it to the Final Four last year.
I don't even meaningfully rank Lightning Run. I only rank my top 40 in a live magnet system on my refrigerator. So Lightning Run is not even in the meaningful rankings for me. So I don't understand the whole hoopla. I thought it was a bunch of cheap little pops of airtime. I didn't like it at all. It's better than a lot of coasters. It's better than the Cedar Creek Mine Train. It's better than Ninja at Magic Mountain. But there's not much more I can say about it.
Well, Nemesis wins here over Lightning Run in the Hypersonic XLC region. Yeah, definitely. So Nemesis going up against Phantom's Revenge here.
Once again, year number two, Nemesis is the sentimental favorite of Raptor and Raptor Universe. That Andy Robarchek, Raptor Universe, and Raptor all support Nemesis. 1994 was the year of inverts, and baby, Nemesis is going all the way this year.
Yeah, too bad Raptor still isn't in the bracket.
Well, that's because you screwed Raptor, but
I screwed Raptor. I don't know what happened there. Intimidator 305 going up against Black Mamba here. Now, two great coasters, I think, but certainly one that a lot of people have ridden, and probably one of the most ridden coasters in this entire poll. And then one that a lot of people have not ridden. So I think this is kind of a tough one to gauge. Most people pick Intimidator 305 here. It is Intimidator 305 moving on here. Not much of a surprise here. Black Mamba looks like a fantastic coaster. But when you put it up against a ride that's Intimidator 305, I don't think many people are going to select Black Mamba there. And not many people did.
Yeah, absolutely. I-305 has so many fans here in the States that I think it's going to be hard for an invert to overcome that. I-305, the clear choice for me as well in that one.
Yeah, not much of a surprise there. So now here's another interesting one to wrap up this region. Diamondback versus Twisted Colossus. It was a difficult one for people to decide on. Lots of people have differing opinions here. Lots of Diamondback picks, lots of Twisted Colossus picks, and not only was this one nearly a 50-50 split with the submissions, a lot of people having the winner of this matchup going deep into the tournament, Elite 8, Final 4, championship game even. Some people, and multiple people having Diamondback in championship game, multiple people having Twisted Colossus in championship games. So this is one that is going to have at first glance, you would not think this would be one you would think maybe Millennium Force or Intimidator 305 would be the favorite here, but this is a matchup that is going to upset and really spoil a lot of brackets early.
Well, I'm looking at this, and personally, my pick is Diamondback. That Diamondback's still right there in my top 10. Twisted Colossus, I thought was a very nice coaster, very good coaster, just right around 20 for me. I could see people picking Diamondback, having that go pretty deep. I think it's a pretty ballsy move if you have Twisted Colossus going deep, being a brand new coaster, and keep in mind it kind of opened up a little bit later. That I don't know how many people got out there to ride Twisted Colossus. Yeah, all the West Coast people are going to love it, but I'm not quite sure if it has to make it that deep in this tournament. My choice here is Diamondback, and I think Diamondback does have a pretty good chance of going deep.
Well, I have Diamondback higher on my personal list too, but maybe a slight upset here. Twisted Colossus with the victory over Diamondback. So look at this, a couple of upsets here in this region. We've seen Millennium Force go down to Phantom's Revenge, and now Diamondback goes down to Twisted Colossus. So Andy, all three Kings Island coasters getting knocked out early this year. How about and Millennium Force getting knocked out? Maverick, the only coaster in Ohio there between Cedar Point and Kings Island that moves on to the second round this year.
I just have one thing to say. Just one thing. It's Danny Miller at COASTER-net.com. Danny Miller at COASTER-net.com. That's who you want to send the bomb threats, the hate mail, all the anthrax letters to. Don't send them to me. I'm supporting Ohio. I'm dressed all in green today.
I'm supporting Ohio too. I'm wearing my Raptor green polo.
I don't think you are.
Anyways, moving on to the final region here. Final region here.
Here we go.
The Big Bad Wolf region. And this is a region
here we go.
This is a region that you said on the selection show This is a region where if you can find a coaster you like in this region to ride, it could make the difference between you winning and losing this bracket in this contest, because there are a couple of good options here for a Final Four contender, not a lot of great options that immediately stick out to you. Now, you do have a former champion in Leviathan from 2 years ago. Iron Rattler has done very well. X2 has done very well in this in the past. Intimidator at Carowinds was a Final Four coaster in the very first year. So you said it. Find one you like and ride it to the Final Four here. The first matchup is Leisberg-Bonnen versus Leviathan. And Leisberg-Bonnen is a coaster that has earned so much attention for all the wrong reasons in this bracket, because it sounds like only people who have ridden it get this ride, and people who haven't ridden are like, what the hell is this thing doing here?
Danny Miller, 50 miles an hour. 50 miles an hour is the top speed of Leisberg-Bonnen. You're telling me, you know what? It's only going to make me angry. Let's just move on. It's only going to make me angry.
Well, maybe I'll put your thoughts at ease here a little bit, and everyone else too. Leviathan, moving on, second round. I don't think there's any surprise there.
I'm still befuddled, but whatever. Let's move on.
Moving on, Intimidator, Carowinds, B&M Hypercoaster, Tatsu, Six Flags Magic Mountains Flying Coaster. Lots of B&M coasters in this region. A very interesting matchup. Two coasters that I put very close to each other. Two coasters that are very well liked in their region, specifically by people who are in that region. Intimidator is a top coaster in the southeast. Tatsu is one of the top coasters on the west coast. It's really I think this one's really a battle of regionalism, I think.
And you know, a lot Intimidator Carowinds has a lot of detractors as well. So I'm curious to see how it plays against, one of the flyers that people tend to love. This was a really tough choice for me between these two. I still don't feel confident, but my pick goes to Intimidator because it's the classic sit-down coaster. I think people tend to enjoy those more.
It is Intimidator, moving on to the Sweet 16. And you know what? I pointed this out to you when we first saw how this bracket would turn out. A couple regions ago, we have Fury 325, which is the Giga from Carowinds, going up against the Hyper from Canada's Wonderland, Behemoth. We now have the Giga from Canada's Wonderland, Leviathan, going up against the Hyper from Carowinds. So the two coasters in the Cedar Fair chain that have B&M Hypers and Gigas, they kind of cross. You've got the Giga from one and the Hyper from the other, and then the Hyper from the one and the Giga from the other. So two interesting matchups there, I think. Moving on here, final two matchups of the night. Apollo's Chariot and Nitro, one that we dug into.
The battle of the bad!
Oh, geez.
The battle of the bottom! This is flip a coin on which one you dislike more.
Well, for me at least, this one is an easy choice. I think this one is easily Apollo's Chariot. I think Apollo's Chariot is still one of my favorite coasters in the back row. In the front row, the ride leaves a little bit to be desired, but I think in the back row on that right side, I think Apollo's Chariot is still a fantastic coaster. I'm putting Andy to sleep over there. So, Apollo's Chariot defeats Nitro in the first round. Apollo's Chariot going on to the Sweet 16. Andy, wake up.
I have no problem with that. Yeah, I don't care. Truly, I do not care.
Wow. And Apollo's Chariot gets to go up again. Now, it was funny. We had a lot of California people write in and say they were worried about the steel bracket until Tatsu and X2 both popped up in the last region. We see X2 here going up against Iron Rattler in the final matchup of the round of 32, the thrilling 32. Predictions on this one. These are two coasters that you and I both have very, very high.
I loved Iron Rattler when I wrote it. That last drop into the canyon, absolutely, I thought I was going to be flying out of it. it was an amazing airtime on that. But, this past September, I had the chance to revisit Magic Mountain, and I had a renaissance of X2. And I had always thought it was perfect and amazing, and I had forgotten that because I rode X2 early on in my coaster career, all the way back in 2010. At the end of 2010, I rode X2, and as I rode more and more, I found myself moving X2 down. But after riding X2 again this year, it is amazing. Jumped right back into my tide. However, I recognize that people hate it as well. So that's going to be the big question here is are there enough X2 haters in this voting pool to bring it down? I don't know. I think Iron Rattler's the safe choice here. I think X2 is the right choice, though, and thus I went with X2.
Yeah, X2, I think I have a little bit higher, and I think X2 is a lot like Phantom's Revenge in that fact, because I think it's one of those rides that you only ride every so often, and once you ride it, you kind of start to move it down because you forget how amazing it really is. But X2 is a phenomenal coaster, and I could be wrong here, but I want to say that X2 lost in the first round last year because it had a tough matchup, and it's unfortunate because it has a tough matchup this year. Iron Rattler defeats X2 in the first round, so like you said, it's the safe choice, Iron Rattler, but personally, I think X2 is the better coaster in this matchup.
Yeah.
It is Iron Rattler moving on,
sure.
So we see Iron Rattler taking on Apollo's Chariot. So we see 3 B&M coasters moving on to the next round in the Big Bad Wolf region. So that wraps up the Thrilling 32, the round of 32. So, over the course of the last hour here or so, we've gone through all these matchups. So now, starting in the next, so you now know how the first round played out. Hopefully your brackets aren't completely busted. Hopefully you didn't have a Millennium Force or a Beast going all the way, because if you did, you might be in some trouble. Hopefully your brackets are doing okay. And we are looking forward to bringing you the next round. At this time, Andy, do you have any final thoughts from either of these two brackets? Any real surprises here? I mean, there are a couple surprises, but I think for the most part, things that we could agree with, or if we don't agree with, we could at least see, things playing out as they did.
This first round, I think, had a lot of tough choices. The biggest surprise has got to be Millennium Force going down.
Yeah,
that's going to bust a lot of people's brackets. It's going to be fun to see how people recover and who comes out to be the 2016 Thrilling 32 bracket champion.
Yeah, definitely. It's certainly going to be interesting to see where it goes from here. So, again, we want to thank everyone for participating and thank everyone for joining us. It'll just be a few days, probably somewhere between 5 days and a week, until we haven't really decided our timeline just yet. But you will see the next round coming out very shortly. So until then, I'm Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York.
And I'm Andrew Barchak from Chicago, Illinois. And as always, ride on, Ride Warriors.
See you next time, Bracket Busters.